Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by Citrix Sharefile, secure file transfer built for business. Visit sharefile.com, click on the microphone, and enter TWIST for a free 30-day trial. And by InVision. Find out why so many hot startups are using InVision to prototype, present, and collaborate on design in real time. Sign up for a 90-day free trial today at invisionapp.com/twist. And by AWS Activate, the Amazon Web Services Startup Program. It's easy to start and scale your business with AWS. Visit aws.amazon.com/activate.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis. Today on This Week in Startups, the founder and executive chairman of Catapult. Catapult is a company that builds a small little product that they put in the small of athletes' backs, and they basically track everything that athlete does in training and even in game. People like the Dallas Mavericks and New York Knicks and Buffalo Bills are using this, and they're actually getting huge results, so much so that it's changing the rules of some sports based on the big data being processed on the backs of big athletes in game and in practice. It's a fascinating discussion of how sports is going to change forever because of big data. Stick with us.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah, money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups. It's me, it's your boy, Jason Calacanis. You can follow me on the Twitter at Jason, that's at JASON. And you can follow the show. And this show is called This Week in Startups. We do it twice a week. You can follow us on Twitter at TWI Startups. And we call the show Twist. So if you use the hashtag #twist, people will know that you're in the know. And if you see me on the street or in an airport, or you're sitting next to me while I'm having dinner with my family, don't be weird. Don't look at me out of the corner of your eye and be like, I know that guy from somewhere. Just walk up to me and say, hey, Jason, I'm a huge fan of the show. Put your hand up, give me a high five or a fist bump, and tell me your favorite episode. And like, I've been living in San Francisco now for about 2 weeks. I made the big move, and I am getting stopped constantly on the street by fans of the show. One person told me Hand Up and Rose was their favorite episode. Another person, Sokka. Another person, DHH. Just tremendous to have so many fans. And for my ego, which is frail and huge at the same time, to have so many fans coming up to me and just saying, I love the show. Is the greatest moment of my life when you all stop me on the street and say, Jason, I love the show. I love that. It makes my day. So please make my day. Don't be weird and be like, oh, that's that guy from the show. Just be like, hey, Jason, I love the show. And the more inappropriate you are, like if you yell it across the airport and you're like, I love the show. I love Twist, DHH, my favorite, Sokka. Just yell the name of a person at me. Sokka, DHH. I know what you're talking about. And I'll be like, right on. And it'll be weird, but it'll be like our weird thing. And everybody who stops me now and they say they're a fan, I just say, can I take a selfie with you? And they're like, wait, I was going to ask you if I could take a selfie. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing a preemptive awkward selfie moment. It's my new thing. I preempt the awkward selfie-esque. And I just take the picture. And then I tweet it. I blow you up to 200,000 people on Twitter and the name of your company, right? Because we're all in this together. And This Week in Startups is part of the Launch Foundation. You all know that. The Launch Foundation, I'm calling it the foundation now, and it's not really called the foundation, but it's a nice thing to call it because what we're doing here is we're trying to support founders and inspire innovation. That's the point of this show, This Week in Startups. That's the point of the Launch Ticker. You can follow that on Twitter. That's our research service. We have a research service. And we have the Launch Festival every year and a couple of other events like Launch Scale. Launch Festival is going to be in March 2nd, 3rd, and 4th with a hackathon right before that at Fort Mason. And we're going to have 12,000 people or so, well over 10. I think maybe 12 will hit. And it's the largest startup conference in the world. I'm not bragging. It's just the truth. And it's not a competition, but we do have the largest and the best event. And you know what? You can come for free as my guest. That's what we do. We're here to support people. And so we'll have all that coming out. Just follow @launch on Twitter, and you'll find out how to get a free ticket to the event. All right, listen, that's enough about us and the foundation and me and my ego in San Francisco. WeWork. That's where I'm sitting. I'm at WeWork Golden Gate in San Francisco Central Market neighborhood, also known as the Tenderloin, which I guess people say the Tenderloin, they're like, oh my God, it's in transition. We're pioneers here. It's a little dicey at times, but I love it. Reminds me of the East Village in New York back in the 80s and 90s. I like a little flavor. I like a little bit of texture in my neighborhood, and that's what you get right here. But they've also got places all over San Francisco, New York, Boston, D.C., Seattle, L.A. And this place, the Golden Gate office, is sold out anyway. And what a great deal. I mean, it's like, I think it nets out to $400, $500, $600 a desk, depending how many people you cram into an office. And it is desk as a service. And when I started in the internet business, my God, you had to like really spend thousands of dollars to put a deposit down, and then spend thousands of dollars putting a T1 and a phone system in, and thousands of dollars on coffee and reception and yada yada, and desk space, desks, chairs, HVAC, all this stuff. I dealt with all this as a business owner in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. Like literally I was dealing with quotes for HVAC systems. It's like your heating and air conditioning. And now you just basically give somebody who's $600 and you got a desk and you're done. And you can leave at any time, right? Which is really great. Thanks, WeWork. All right. And if you're a super fan of the show, go to twistlist.co. Twistlist.co. That's it. All right. This is going to be an amazing episode because we have a great founder on the program. His name is Adir Shiffman. He is from Australia, and he is the executive chairman of Catapult Sports. And I found out about this because he emailed me another cold email over the transom. He's like, hey, Mark Cuban's an investor in my company. You're friends with Mark Cuban. I'm like, yeah, I know Mark. And we invest in things together. He's invested in my companies. And we've been pals. And I said, well, if Mark invested, it must be interesting. He generally doesn't invest in things that are not interesting. And I looked at the videos and I looked at the technology and I said, wow, this is cool. Catapult Sports. Tell everybody, Adir. You're a super fan of the show, by the way.
I'm a huge fan of the show.
Huge. I'm very big in Australia.
I'm not surprised by that.
I mean, there's a lot of people watch the show in Australia, from what I understand.
I'm not surprised.
Mark Pesci's down there, too, who was always a judge here at the Launch Festival.
Mark interviewed me at a conference recently. That's
really?
A small world, right?
It is a small world. Mark Pesci, one of my old friends. So you have a favorite episode or a favorite person who's been on the show? Or
I thought Mark Suster was excellent when he was on the show.
Recently?
Yeah,
he's been on multiple times.
Yes.
We talked about the maker sale and everything.
That's right. I thought he said some very insightful things. It was a really interesting episode. I have to say, Mark Suster is a little bit underappreciated at times because he's a new VC. He's in LA. It's easy to dismiss him if he's in LA. But he's building up a little portfolio. He got the monkey off his back with that big maker sale. We should do a little promo of that episode. Producer Jackie, Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie. Every time I say producer, Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie, Jacob, we should play like a little, whatever the Emmy Award show theme is. Like that'd be a great soundbite, like da-da-da-da. I wish I had that Emmy right here on my desk. We're going to win an Emmy for this show. All right, so tell everybody, what is Catapult Sports? So Catapult, thanks for having me on. It's fantastic.
Oh, yeah, great.
So Catapult is wearable athlete analytics. That is the best way to describe it. So it is a service we provide to elite teams, pro teams, elite teams, and they have a piece of hardware that they wear. It transmits data to a software analytics engine that's sitting in the cloud, and it enables coaches, trainers to improve the performance of their players, to reduce the injuries, to make some tactical decisions. In some countries around the world, it's used in games to make real-time decisions as well.
In games?
In games, yeah.
Wow.
Sure. So,
all right, so let's take a look. Here's the hardware. I've got it in my hand. And this is, here you go, Catapult number 22061. Made in Australia. Very proud of that. And there's a power button here, I suppose. And I just power that on, and I can see the lights blink. Boom, 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 boom. And what is inside? And by the way, this is, as you can see, it's the size of just slightly smaller than a pack of cigarettes. Much bigger than a Fitbit. It's probably 6 Fitbits. So this is much bigger than a Fitbit. How is it different than, say, a Fitbit?
So what's sitting inside there? The componentry is different.
Yeah.
What it's doing with the data is completely different, and obviously the analytics package that's attached to it is different.
Okay, let's start with the sensors and the hardware. What's different? Yeah. What do you got in here, sensor-wise? Get technical.
So I love those kind of questions. So there's a tracking engine inside there. So the one you're holding there has a GPS tracking engine.
A GPS?
That's right.
Okay, so that's a global positioning satellite.
Correct.
And that tells you up to a couple of feet where this is.
Correct. But a
couple of feet is not helpful on a basketball court, right?
So on a basketball court, you're not going to use GPS anyway because you've got no line of sight to satellites.
Right.
So we have another version of that, which uses something called LPS, Local Positioning System.
LPS. Now, that is a standard?
That is, there was no standard, so we kind of had to start introducing technology.
Interesting.
So
what's the difference between LPS and GPS?
So the non-technical way to think about it is, it's like we've brought the satellites down from orbit and put them around the stadium.
Great. So there's 3 or 4 huge satellites sitting on the ground
12,
like they crash.
So 12 nodes, yeah.
Okay. Now, what are those things? What do they look like?
So
where are they? Give me the technical hardware answer.
Yeah, so they're kind of little. They look like little boxes.
Okay.
And basically, I don't want to go into too much detail about what's in them, but they're effectively have an RF signal that's enabling us to identify.
This is proprietary technology.
So we've developed this in partnership with an Australian research institute that was actually the institute that invented Wi-Fi.
You're kidding?
Yeah.
Wi-Fi was invented in Australia?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know Kiwis invented that. See, this is the way. If you ever want to piss on somebody from Australia, you refer to Australians as Kiwis.
Yeah, I'm not going to say the Canadian thing back, right? Because I love this country. I'm not going to.
Kiwis are from New Zealand. We're talking about Aussies here. Yeah. Aussie, Oz.
Yes. Oi, oi, oi.
Oi, oi, oi.
That's it.
Will you get the meat pie with the? I love that meat pie with the wheels, Harry the wheels. What's that called?
You know a lot about some very specific things in Australia.
You ever get that?
Yes.
Is it Harry's meat pie?
Yeah.
Like at 1 or 2 in the morning, you've had like a couple.
Or a bit later in the morning, sure.
Or 3 or 4 in the morning. Trust me, me and Tyler were there, and we went down to the pier, the dock, and we had that Harry's Wheels.
Harry's Cafe de Wheels.
Oh, Harry's Cafe de Wheels. Explain what that is to the people. Technical on that.
That is old school food van, right? I mean, that's what it is. It's an old school food van that's around kind of, I think it's close to 24 hours a day that serves meat pies. That's an Aussie food.
Meat pies.
Yeah, meat pies.
And then
I don't know how much meat is in the pie, by the way, but it's called a meat pie.
Or what meat it is.
That's right. It's not good to ask too many questions.
But they put the scoop right on there the peas.
Yes, that's exactly right.
With the gravy.
Yeah.
And you eat this thing. If you've had a couple of pops and you eat this thing, I mean, it is the closest thing to seeing God that I've experienced in my life. My God, oh man, I could get one of those meat pies. All right. So anyway, back to the device. So Wi-Fi was a standard that was created in Australia. At what institute?
CSIRO. That's what it's called.
CSIRO.
A government institute.
A government institute, huh?
So they developed some tech that was mostly designed for miners, underground miners. And we had a look at it and we said, you've spent a lot of years developing this. We can miniaturize it and we can commercialize it. We've got a use case for this.
What were they trying to do? Save miners?
So track where so Australia is a big mining country.
Of course it is. You guys are the ones who are growing China right now.
That's right. So they wanted to know where miners were underground. These mines are huge and it's a dangerous environment.
Yeah.
And they had developed some tech, but it is hard to miniaturize tech. I mean, I know people have said it on this show before. Hardware is hard.
Yeah.
It's definitely hard.
Brutally hard.
And so that's one of the skill sets that Catapult has had for the last 7 or 8 years.
So you have that LPS. Mm-hmm. So with RF technology exactly on the court where they are.
Mm-hmm. Very precisely.
How precise? Let's get to that. How precise?
So I could put one on your left shoulder and on your right shoulder, and I would absolutely know which shoulder was which as you moved around.
Wow. So the Dallas Mavericks and the New York Knicks are running up and down the court, and you know where each player is, and you know to what degree my shoulders are tilted in all axes, up, down, left, right, x-axis, y-axis. Tell me about that.
So let me answer this question in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
The least important thing to these teams is where they are positioned on the court.
Okay.
The least important.
All right. When we get back from this commercial break, I want you to tell me why on This Week in Startups. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, let me take a moment to tell you about Citrix Sharefile, which is designed for business. And with Sharefile, you can use a cloud that you can trust, that's secure, to send files securely and not worry about sensitive documents like intellectual property, pitch decks, confidential stuff like mergers and acquisition documents. Like, I go through these documents all day long, and I know how important they are. They should not be email attachments. They should be in a document locker, in a proper one with secure links like Sharefile. That's why we use it here. And you can send files of almost any size, and you can access those files from any computer or mobile device, of course. And here's how we use it here. We request files to be uploaded into specific folders. We email those alerts to people, and we can control who has access to these files on a very granular level, and it's got all that great auditing. Here you can see, I only want people to download and view this. I want people to be able to upload. I want people to edit files and folders, move files and folders, create notes, create URLs, all that stuff. We can get super granular. In fact, it's too granular for us. I mean, it's crazy. They thought of everything with Sharefile, and that's why we love it. No credit card is required, and you get a 30-day free trial if you use the offer code TWIST. So go to sharefile.com and click on the podcast listeners microphone button. That's in the upper right-hand corner. Sharefile.com, podcast listeners microphone button. Use the promo code TWIST. And I love the product. We use it here. And if you want to get the exclusive Sharefile video that we've created, how to raise money from angel investors, part 2. We did part 1, and now we're doing part 2. Part 2 is only available on Sharefile. So go ahead and sign up for Sharefile using the offer code TWIST. Then send us a request to file link to sharefile@launch.co, and you will get it. All new video, only available by requesting the file through Sharefile. Thank you to my friends at Sharefile. You rock. Okay, let's get back to this very amazing interview. All right, welcome back to This Week in Startups. It's me, your host, Jason Calacanis. You can follow me on Twitter @Jason. And I'm here with Adir Shiffman. Adir is the executive chairman. That's basically the guy who founded the company, basically, is a way of saying that. And Catapult Sports is his company. They have incredible clients in the NFL, NBA, NCAA, NHL, and soccer teams around the world, also known as football. And they've got 80% market share globally and even higher in the U.S. Nobody really makes a product like this. You guys originated this 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So when we left, I was asking you, like, do you know where everybody is on the court? Because I guess I think that's important. But in fact, it's not important. Tell me why that's not what's important to the coaches, to the trainers. What is important to them if that's not important?
So the other sensors that are sitting inside there, a lot of them are what we call inertial sensors.
Inertial, what does that mean?
Accelerometers, gyroscopes, magnetometers on 3 axes.
Okay.
So that
what's a magnetometer? I mean, I know an accelerometer.
An electronic compass.
Got it. Okay. So you know where I'm facing.
We know where you're facing. So facing is tough because GPS doesn't tell you facing.
No.
In fact, GPS is a very imprecise way to measure acceleration and speed.
That's
got big errors.
Right. That was a big thing that TK was telling me about with Uber, because in the old days, Uber just showed you the front of a cab and you'd see the cab moving like it was like an Atari video game. And then they finally were able to smooth out what direction the cab was going and actually show it turning. And he told me that was like one of the hardest things they did.
I mean, XY position is only good for position. Once you start trying to calculate speed, acceleration, etc., it gets very inaccurate very quickly. Not usable for us. Not usable.
So what are they tracking here? So you got those great sensors. I got it.
So what they want to know is what is happening to the player whilst they play. So what they're trying to understand is, are injuries developing? Are they performing actions repetitively and consistently? They want to know things about the biomechanics of those players. What they are trying to do is maximize the performance and the longevity of those players and reduce their injury. And for that, you need all of those sensors.
And here they go. I'm just playing right here in the background where the guy from the Buffalo Bills just took the sensor out of that player's back, and I see him putting it into the back of shirts there. So you have teams actually using this.
Correct. We've got close to 500 teams using this.
500 teams. Yeah. And what do they actually learn in practice? What's the most tangible thing that a trainer or a coach would ask? What's the first thing? Let's start with the NBA because that's what I love. What's the first thing, the coach is going to say to the person who manages Catapult?
So a strength and conditioning coach or something. So what they're interested in knowing is this so the holy grail of elite sport is to train in a way that replicates what you do during a game. That is so old school is run laps. But in football, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's not many people running laps during a game. So that is not a great way to train to maximize performance in games. So they are trying to replicate game behavior in training.
Got it.
That is what they're trying to do.
And the players, when they're in practice, I would suppose, are holding back a little bit, and when they're games, their adrenaline's much higher and they're going harder. Is that correct?
So it is hard to hold back most players. These are highly competitive athletes. Mostly they just want to beat everybody around them.
Got it.
And the trick is to get them to peak on game day, and that is a hard thing to do. Again, old school, you got players that were peaking during practice times and they're already coming down on game day. And this is, this sports science is very sophisticated, and there are techniques called periodization, which basically means you train an athlete so you enable them to recover physically, but their training performance continues rising even though you're pulling back the frequency of training. It is a very sophisticated area of sports science, and that is the aim, to get them to peak.
How long has this been a science? Because I remember back in the 90s when I was watching the Knicks, I would read about Michael Jordan playing blackjack till 4 or 5 in the morning, being seen in Vegas with a cigar, or he would be down in AC, Atlantic City, playing blackjack while smoking a cigar at the table till 4 a.m, and we'd come the next night and we'd beat the Knicks by, 20 points and just humiliate us. So this obviously it was not happening in the 90s.
Well, it depends where. So the reason that we're from, the reason Australia has come up with this is because we had a disaster in the Montreal Olympics and we won no gold medals. And that was a national catastrophe.
You guys took that seriously?
Way too seriously. And,
wow. That's that Aussie pride, huh?
That, we think we're great at sport. So the response was, let's create the Australian Institute of Sport. And its differentiator was, let's use sports science. And that was not a usual
thing. So when was the Montreal? Was that the 80s or 90s?
76, I think.
That was 76?
Yeah. So wow. They created the Australian Institute of Sport and they said, at its core will be sports science. And for the last 25 years, sort of kind of diminished recently, Australia disproportionately won gold medals in Olympics.
Based on per capita, whatever.
Correct. And that was because of the integration of sports science into training.
So this has been going on for 4 decades.
In Australia. But this tech is 8 years old, and in the US, this tech is 2 or 3 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
So what impact has it had in the NBA and the NFL, and what percentage of teams are using it in those two specific leagues? So
there's many questions there. Let me use Florida State as a better example because they've very publicly talked about our stuff. Okay. So last year, Florida State football, they won the college championship. They've come out very publicly and said one of the reasons that we won was because we had fewer soft tissue injuries on our key players during the year, and that's because we have mastered the use of Catapult Sports technology.
Okay.
So
a soft tissue injury is like just pulling a hamstring?
That's the classic one. Yeah. That's the classic one.
So pulling your hammy.
Correct. Exactly.
And you can keep people from pulling their hammy, if I'm getting what you're saying, because when I look at the results from the Catapult and I'm the trainer, I see in the data what?
I'll tell you something you'll love about hamstrings. So the body is very smart, and as you're going to damage a hamstring, it tries to protect itself, and one of the ways it does that is for a given velocity that you're running, it will reduce your stride length. Now, you will not see that with the naked eye, and you will not feel that as the athlete, but our data will pick, we know your stride length for a given velocity over time historically, and when that stride length starts shortening in real time for a given velocity, we will start flagging to the training staff, there is a risk of soft tissue injury developing here.
Wow. So essentially, the body is making a micro adjustment.
Correct.
To keep the hamstring from literally exploding in blood and tearing, which I did when I was taking my 6-degree black belt test. I literally exploded my hamstring,
right? It's not pleasant.
And the back of my leg was dark purple and black that night. Like the most disgusting thing you've ever seen. When I kicked, I felt it pop.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
That's awful.
And you can't walk for weeks. But anyway, you know that the stride length is coming in. Correct. And the athlete's not even aware of it probably. Correct. And nobody with the naked eye can become aware of it.
That's right.
And what happens? An alarm goes off and says, hey, everybody stop.
Yeah,
Jason's about to pull his hammy?
There are flags. So the software has... So you described the software as Google Analytics. It's a pretty good description. I would say it's a combination of a much more functional version of Google Analytics combined with Salesforce and the kind of lifestyle management or lifecycle management of Salesforce.
Got it. It sounds to me actually more like Chartbeat. Full disclosure, I'm an investor and I'm crushing it in that investment. I was the first angel. Thank you very much. So this Chartbeat does real-time tracking of what's going on in your site, or New Relic for that matter, real-time tracking of what's going on with your server level. Do you have to program that in, or because that seems to me like, is your job to just give them the data, or is your job to give them, these are the alerts and these are the things to look for? Because a lot of times you build a platform, you give the data, but really this actionable items.
Yeah.
Where do the actionable items come from? Because that's an actionable item. Did that come from you, a doctor, a sports doctor, or some combination?
So as it happens, my background was originally I was an MD as an aside.
You were an MD. Yeah. In addition to starting this company, you're an MD.
So the way to think about me with this company is, I'm probably what you call a late stage founder. So they had a product, they had started commercializing it, but the growth has happened in the last 3 to 4 years type of thing. So, the way that we think about data and data hierarchies is at the base level, and this is true of any data company, at the base level you have raw data. One level up you have, let's call it data visualization.
Yeah.
One level up you have analytics. And then at the pinnacle, you might have what we would call predictive analytics, or for a Fitbit, you might call it behavior changing analytics.
Yes.
Now, the trick with this is not to provide raw data. So that the first thing...
because the raw data,
Who cares? No one cares how fast someone is running for most of the time. That is not what's important.
And these trainers are super busy as well.
Correct.
So the fact that you give them a bunch of raw data, that makes their job harder.
So what they care about. So we've got very sophisticated algorithms. So people, when they say algorithms, what they usually mean is equations. We don't mean equations. We mean we are able to identify in football, for example, that a tackle just occurred, and then we will quantify everything that happened during that tackle. What was the velocity of the player going in? Yeah. What was the deceleration, lateral movement? What was the force on that player?
Wow.
We will then add it to something that is proprietary that's called player load, and that will give a feel for the amount of workload that player is enduring relative to what you want them to be doing. And in Australia, so we've got an Australian football sport, so like nothing else on earth, and there are dynamic interchanges, so you can swap as many times as you want. It's all in real time. Decision-making on those interchange decisions are made using our data in real time.
Okay, when we get back from this very important message from our partners, I want you to show me the dashboard, because we have the dashboard here.
That's right.
Where we can actually see in real time the charts. And I saw it before the show, and it is absolutely amazing when we get back from this important message. Hey, let me take a moment to tell you about InVision. InVision is a great way for your designers and your UX people and your content people and your management team to share mock-ups. And here, pull up my screen here, and I'll show you. I'm working on new features for Inside.com. As you know, I not only run this show, but I run a startup called Inside.com, and we are trying to increase engagement in the product. So I said to my designers and to my team, I want to do surveys, right? It's just a simple idea, and we're going to have this out in the next couple of weeks. But here is a design on my screen of what our surveys will look like, right? And so I can get this design and I can say, wow, this button where it says share doesn't look so good. So I turn on comments and I just click. Oh, I want to put a comment here, and I say the word share is in blue, and on a blue background, no one will be able to read it. Also, you don't need a colon because, well, you don't. And then I say, I'm going to post this to Adam and to our designer, and boom, now they get that comment, right? And so instead of this conversation occurring on email or in a chat room, which is ridiculous, they can then go comment on that exact moment and then give me exact feedback. And here's another design. And so they said to me, hey, here's another way it could work. You could click on it, you get the little summary here, click on it again, and you see this type of result. And I can just say, you know what? I'm not a fan of this style. Boom. Go back to the pie chart. Boom. And I just send that to the whole team. Boom. Everybody got it. Now, this is a product that is, you can also, by the way, I forgot to mention this. I'm doing this on the desktop. I also can get these exact designs and mock-ups on my phone and be able to see them in their native environment. So it makes mobile production so much easier, so much faster. I wished there was a product like this so much that I was telling my designers a year ago, email me screenshots, or I'm sorry, images that are this size, and I'll put them into the iPhoto library on my frickin' phone, and then I'll go to the phone and I'll put them in a certain order and I'll swipe through them to get the feel for it. That's how stupid I was doing this. And then I found InVision and I was like, oh my God, there's a reason why Airbnb, Evernote, MTV, Adobe, Box, and Zendesk use it, as well as 300,000 designers. Special offer for you, our Twist listeners. Go to InVisionApp.com/twist and try it for 90 days free. InVisionApp.com/twist. InVisionApp.com/twist. We are lucky here at This Week in Startups because our ads are sold out 3, 4, 5, 6 months in advance typically, and we only allow products on the program for me to talk about that I believe in, because I don't need to read ads. There doesn't even need to be ads on this program, okay? Listen, I'm a successful guy. I don't need to do ads. You make me do an ad for something I don't believe in, it's not happening, okay? I just won't do it. Therefore, I'm a lucky bastard. We get to pick who advertises on the program. What a great life this is. Go to InVisionApp.com/twist, and I can guarantee you will be happy because I use this all goddamn day long. InVision app. I love it. All right, back to the program. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to This Week in Startups. You can find us on the web, thisweekinstartups.com, on the Twitter at TWI Startups. You can find us on Instagram, or the Insta, as the kids call it, at TWI Startups. And you can't find us on Facebook, because why would we invest in Facebook pages when they duped us into paying for a bunch of followers and the rest of the country and the world, and then they only let you reach 5% of your followers? Lame. No dig to Facebook, but really, like, how many times can you double cross us? Really? Just not a fan. Not a fan of deception, Facebook. Sorry, calling you out. I don't understand why any publisher would invest in Facebook at this point. They're all trying to get, like, Facebook's big in Australia, I guess, still.
It's big everywhere.
It's big everywhere, exactly.
It's big everywhere.
But, people are using it less, I think.
I thought your conversation with Mark Suster was interesting about makers' investment and support of YouTube and taking the risk, building a whole business around YouTube, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge victory lap for them that they got that deal done. The inside information was like that business could not get more funding from, like, the venture capitalists. So as time went on, VCs were like, I don't really want to be involved in that business. And they had to get the media companies and the Comcast to sort of prop it up, the potential buyers. And they made an excellent product.
That's a great exit, though, right?
What a dependency. Well, here's the thing I'll say. Great businesses don't exit. They become large, sustainable entities. So, like Twitter, Uber, Dropbox, Facebook, Apple, those are great businesses because they didn't have to exit.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But if you have to exit, if the leading candidate in the space has to exit, and a big media company that's desperate to understand why they're losing their audience to YouTube has to buy it, that's not a great sign that maker will be around 5 years from now. The term maker will not be here in 5 years. There will be no maker studios. There'll be like a technical division at Disney that just like Broadcast.com, Mark's company. Listen, and he made a great sale, $5 billion, $6 billion, collar to stock, whatever. It's a great story. But the fact is, they totally dismantled that business. They made it Yahoo Broadcasting and then ignored it. And so, but he had gone public with that. But if he had kept that going, Broadcast.com would have been YouTube and Maker combined because Mark really got it early. But, hey, it's tougher things than that. But anyway, listen, I'm going on a total aside here, but I love the fact that you watch the show.
So you were going to talk about software, but I wanted to say one more thing about hardware before you talked about software.
Okay, good.
So you talked about the device size early on.
Yeah.
Now, people look at that, and one of the common questions we get asked is, are you planning on making it smaller?
Yeah, see, what I thought about this was not smaller, but more of sensors. Because when I look at this,
so that is music to my ears.
Because I look at this and I'm like, you know what? On LeBron James, who is 250 pounds or something crazy and whatever, 6'11", like this is a peanut. It's nothing. And it weighs 3 ounces maybe.
So the main reason it's that size is not because of the number of sensors in there. It's not because of the sensor size. It's because sitting in there as well is a processor with custom firmware. I mean, we capturing 1,000 data points per second per player.
Right, and you're processing it here and sending.
Well, you can't send 1,000 data points per second into the cloud. I mean, it's not efficient.
No.
And so the reason it's that big mostly is because of power management.
Right.
So when you see tiny, tiny devices that claim to do a whole lot of stuff, you need to think about the fact that they do not have much power capacity, and that is telling you about
watch, the Basis.
Right.
I mean, the Basis, is probably half battery. I mean, that's why they were on the show, and they said that like the Basis is tiny, but the Basis, even with what it's tracking, it's not tracking close to what you're tracking.
And so that's it, right? I mean, so your comments are spot on our philosophy, which is we would much rather increase sophistication than reduce size.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I was just looking at an interesting startup for consumers, and it has, a device that you wear that gives you a lot of this accelerometer stuff. And I was like, instead of trying to make this for every sport, why don't you put it on both wrists, both ankles, and give it to runners, and then make a 3D model of their running, and then just give them small tweaks in the earpiece. Raise your arms 5%. Good. More. Less. Right? Take your stride up a little bit. Take your stride back a little bit. So why isn't this on your wrist and your ankles as well, and you're getting even more data? Because if this is just on the small of my back, you're kind of getting my entire body, but you're not getting...
So I think you're underestimating what can be measured with that potentially.
Okay,
so
tell me.
We did all of that testing.
Yeah.
And what we found is for maybe a 1 or 2% improvement in the information we were capturing, we were getting massively reduced compliance. This you put one device
People wouldn't
on,
do it.
Basically. And, so I'll give you an example of what we could do with this. Now, we don't have this algorithm today, and it exists in a sport called cricket, which you will not care about, but I'll do a baseball example.
Cricket.
So we are able to measure the ball speed of a bowler bowling a cricket ball. We could do the same thing for a pitcher throwing the ball without measuring the ball.
No. The ball. you could measure the ball
speed.
The ball speed
Yep.
based upon this on the small of the cricket pitcher's back.
Correct.
They call it a pitcher and
Bowler.
Baller.
Yeah.
See, I like the spot already. If you're calling the pitcher baller.
Well, probably that's my accent that calls it baller, but
Baller.
bowler.
Oh, bowler.
Bowler. Yeah,
they said baller. I'm like, this is a squat for me, man. Baller. So anyway, you got the baller.
Yeah.
You can tell the speed based on the mechanics.
So this is on a central axis of the body. It's measuring all biomechanical movements. We do not need external sensors.
Interesting. So back to...
I sidetracked you, I'm sorry.
No, it's great. It's great. I mean, it's a very interesting thing to think about because it sort of feels like as this is really a big data play, isn't it, in a way? Like you're capturing so much data that's never been captured before. You have all of this history of like what works, what doesn't, based on coaching experience. And some of it is wives' tales, like what we call in the United States an old wives' tale. So like an old wives' tale used to be you put butter on a burn.
Right.
And it was actually very big in the Italian community.
Well,
so my mom,
you're planning to eat the burn, or is it?
Well, here's the thing: the Italian community would do this, and my mom, she's Irish, she worked in the emergency room. This Italian mother comes in with her child who got burned, scalded arm, rubbing butter on it, and it feels great while the ice cold butter is melting. Then you know what it does? The oil creates a coat and keeps the heat in, and it's terrible. Because it keeps it burning, and the sensation is horrible. But this was some old wives' tale that you slather it in butter, probably to cool it down, which is the proper thing to do if you get burned. You want to cool it down as quick as possible. Anyway, there were a bunch of old wives' tales or old, heuristics or concepts that in all different sports are now going to be revealed to be false.
So I think the best way to think about it is we're not trying to replace what the coach knows. We're trying to help them with science to make decisions.
Oh, come on now. There's things that they don't know. There's things that they're making mistakes, though, too. I mean, that sounds very generous of you.
No, listen, definitely.
There's got to be things they've been doing for 20 or 30 years which are absolutely patently false.
So I gave you an example. I mean, running laps at training for the sake of trying to get fit, that is not a fantastic thing to do if you're training athletes.
Why?
Because that is not what is going on during games, and you're trying to prepare people for games.
Right. They do that because why? They were heard that the teams that could run the most laps were best?
My guess is a lot of them probably do it because they did it when they were players, and a lot of this is being passed down. And some of it's right, and some of it is less effective.
So that would be a perfect definition of an old wives' tale is passed down. What else? What was common belief 10 years ago, dogma, that has now been kicked out in sports?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is about how long to play players. So there is no standard number of innings that a pitcher should pitch. There is no standard number of plays that a quarterback should throw or a wide receiver should play.
Okay, wait, let's go to pitcher specifically. Now, that flies in the face of all of baseball, dogma, which is you got to really manage how many pitches are thrown. What is the better way to do it?
So I think you do need to manage how many pitches are thrown. I just want to augment your ability to manage that with cold, hard data that is personalized to that pitcher.
Got it. So there are some pitchers who you really need to manage, and there are others that you may not need to manage. How do you know the difference, specifically with pitching?
Because we've got, so baseball is an area we're not deep into yet. The other three major sports we are.
Cricket, whatever.
Hockey, football, basketball, we got half the NFL in this country. So a lot of the NBA we're big in. So the thing with baseball is, and all sports, we've got historical data on these players and what they do at training and practice. So we know where they peak in terms of their performance. Got it. And they can adjust and adapt. The thing with elite athletes is they never want to go off. They want to play forever, generally speaking. Yeah. And so they can be, you can see pitchers and they're starting to get hit all over the place. But when someone comes out and says it's time to swap, they never want to go off. No,
this is the thing. They never want to go. They got to send 5 people out there. It's like a therapy session. I never understood that in baseball.
So we could help that pitcher feel happier about going off and resting themselves so they can be better for longer in their careers.
And the pitchers are always they're like this. They got the hands and they're just like, and everybody's patting on the back. It's like, well, you're not getting the job done anymore.
They think it's an insult, right? Because they're getting dragged off, but it's not an insult. The human body does not perform at its peak endlessly. You need to manage peak performance.
What they need to do is they need to bring that to basketball. So when they pull somebody out of the game, and they're like, you have to sit down right now, just everybody has to come over to the point guard and be like, oh my God, you turn the ball over and just give them a big hug. I always thought it was quite charming actually in baseball that they're so emotionally distraught that they're being removed from the game that everybody's got to come over and talk it through.
No athlete wants to go off a game. Yeah. So one of the, when you talk about, what's interesting new stuff that we find. So if we look at the amount of time that players spend in different phases of running, they might spend some time walking, jogging, running to 80%, running to 100%. Mm-hmm. So it turns out that there is a big difference between running to 80% and running to 100%. Running to 100% fatigues you severely and reduces your ability later on in the game. So what you want to know is how much time has that player spent running at 100% and what has he been doing?
Of their own ability.
And of their max velocity.
Right. Not the other player's max velocity.
Their max velocity.
Because their max velocity might be the other player's 80%.
It's irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
What you want to know is when they were at max velocity, did they have an impact on the game? Because if they did not, they are killing themselves for no gain. So those are the kind of things that are important.
So you're looking at, because there is a statistic that's really interesting, which is the plus minus. Like when you're in the game, in the NBA, how many points is your team up? And when you leave the game, what happens to your team, right? And so that's that plus minus. So you can do plus minus, so whatever. LeBron James is in the game or Carmelo Anthony in the game. The Knicks are playing plus 5 points. But you can also see, is Carmelo Anthony playing at 100% and the Knicks are down? Why are we wearing him out? Because we should be sitting him. There's no way we're going to beat this team.
Correct.
He should play in the next game.
Let him recover. Carmelo, he plays an insane amount of game time.
Carmelo's playing too much game time.
So,
are you with the Knicks? I saw you maybe with the Knicks, right?
Yeah, we work with the Knicks. Not in games. So, at the moment we're not in games. We're in the D League in games in the NBA, but not
really?
in
Why? The NBA's got to approve this pack, right?
Yeah, I think there's a collaboration, and it's a CBA, and the Players Association has to support it, and the NBA has to support it, and it's complicated, right?
But having Mark Cuban as an investor, hey, this smooths things over.
He's full of good advice, right? So
well, Adam Silver wants to really reimagine the league. I mean, they're talking about him pushing the 3-point line back, and
there are I have to tell you that in our experience, NBA, NHL, they are sophisticated, forward-thinking leagues in what they want to do.
All right, tell me about the NHL, because that to me is fascinating. Nobody's watching hockey anymore. It seems to me to be a great sport, but there's too much fighting going on. The fighting is ridiculous because you want to watch the game, and then you got to take a 3-round fight. It's another 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But anyway.
That's true. Although a lot of people, it seems to be popular with certain demographics.
For me, I'm just this is ridiculous. Two guys who can barely stand and they're holding on to each other, trying to slug each other. It's stupid. No offense to the hockey fans. It's maybe once every 20 games, but 3 times a game, give me a break, Maron. What have you learned about hockey?
So some of it is quite similar. So how do we reduce soft tissue injury? They have a lot of impact injuries in hockey and football.
You think?
And we can't do anything about impact injuries. I mean, they're going to happen.
The impact, you can't do anything about impact injuries.
They're unpredictable.
But do you know, you would know if are they wearing it in game yet or no?
Not in hockey yet.
Okay. So, but if they did wear them in game, you would know at what velocity and force somebody was getting hit.
In Australian football, every one of 36 players on the field is wearing it. Every referee is wearing it.
You're talking about football, soccer football, or football?
No, it's a crazy sport. It's like rugby, but slightly different, and it's a very, very physical sport.
Is this the one where you don't wear pads or helmets?
No pads and no helmets, and the game never stops.
What is wrong with you people?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, man. I saw that movie Animal Kingdom. You guys are crazy, man. Are you from Melbourne?
I'm from Melbourne, yeah.
I was about to say, you're a sick bastard.
Yeah, that's the home of Australian football.
I was about to say, this guy's from Melbourne, because Melbourne is like the Brooklyn or the Bronx of Australia is my perception. It's tough in Melbourne, isn't it?
It's like a cross between it's like a high-cultured Bronx. That's the way to think about it. So the sport is tough, but actually people love sitting around drinking coffees in cafes.
I know, but people get in fights in Melbourne, and it is did you ever see this movie Animal Kingdom?
I haven't.
You never saw the film Animal Kingdom?
No.
Oh my God.
That's terrible that I can't say yes.
Everybody go see, this is this week in movies, Animal Kingdom, 2010. I give it one of my highest ratings. This film, Guy Pearce is in it, by the way.
Oh, okay.
And the woman who's in it, she won an award for it, Jackie Weaver.
Okay, another one.
And she is amazing. Go see the film.
It's possible every Australian has seen it.
It's basically like Goodfellas in Melbourne.
Right, okay. That is why you think it's a tough city.
It's the Godfather in Melbourne. But
fiction.
It is a tough city. Everybody knows that. The people in Sydney are kind of cream buffs compared to Melbourne.
They got a harbour in Sydney, right? They want to just hang around the harbour.
Yeah, exactly. There's some great whites in that harbour, right? You got sharks.
Yeah, there's some sharks in the harbour.
There's some sharks in the harbour. All right, listen, back to hockey. If you actually, and in the football in Australia, if you actually knew how hard people were getting hit, isn't this going to make people come to their senses and say maybe we should start wearing helmets and stuff like that? Because concussions is a big deal in these sports.
Why do you think helmets reduce concussions?
Well, I don't know that they do, actually. So I'll start there that I'm not an expert.
I mean, in Australian football, there are no pads. So it's a different kind of sport.
Right.
But there are not materially worse outcomes for concussions and injuries than there are in the NFL.
Now, I could guess as to why, but you tell me why.
Well, I think one of the things is because there are no pads, there's no temptation to use your head in any way. So you don't have a helmet, you don't have pads. So, everybody naturally protects their head.
Gotcha.
As opposed to, the instincts are different.
And they've been talking about this in football, which is when you put pads on everybody is going to go at a certain velocity. But if you took the pads off, or you went with lighter padding, then when people hit each other, they would actually think, I'm going to get injured worse than the person I'm hitting or equally. But because you got those crazy pads on and you hit somebody in the gut or the side.
But it is a different kind of sport as well, football. Yeah. And I think, we can live in a world where we hypothesize about football with no pads, but that's not coming to reality anytime soon.
But the truth is, did you ever see the documentary on Frontline about the NFL?
Yeah, sure.
This was a brutal, and that's the second recommendation for the show. Everybody at Frontline, one of my favorite shows, but Frontline did a whole series on the NFL covering up this concussion problem. It's terrible. I understand they're a client, so I'm not going to ask you a comment on that. But will there be less injuries? Let me say it in a positive way, an opportunistic way here for you. Can you make sports safer?
There are today fewer injuries in the Australian Football League than there were before our technology was deployed. Okay. In fact, there has been a rule change that was based heavily on our technology.
Oh, that's exactly what I'm getting at. So tell me what that rule change is and what what data did you find and how did they wind up changing the rule?
So there are 4 quarters in an Australian football game.
Got it.
In the 4th quarter, what they were finding was there were a large number of injuries occurring.
No joke, right?
So their idea was, let's see if we can slow down the average velocity in that last quarter to reduce injuries. And the way they did that is they took so I told you there's a dynamic interchange. They took one of the players that you could interchange. There are 4. They took one and they said, that's a substitution now. It can't be dynamically interchanged. We're only going to have 3 dynamic interchange and one of them is going to become a substitute. So once he comes on, that's it. That player's off, he's on. And what they found is that with fewer players available to rotate,
everything slowed down?
Everything slowed down in the last quarter.
To a safe speed?
To a slower speed. The number of injuries reduced.
By what? 1%? 10%?
So,
anybody know?
So the answer to that can't be widely shared, but materially, let's call it.
Okay, so if it's materially, it's probably
double-digit percentages.
It's double-digit. When you say material, it's got to be above 10.
That's right. And
holy cow!
And they were able to measure. So it wasn't just based on our technology, but we were able to flag an issue, and we were able to then close the loop and say, you know what, the game has slowed down in the last quarter.
That's fantastic, dude.
We get used at the judiciary. So when they're deciding whether a player should be suspended, and the player says, "Whoa, I was trying to slow down and move. That was not a deliberate impact."
Ooh.
Pull the Catapult data. Yep, there was a deceleration event and a lateral movement. That player is telling the truth. Do not suspend.
Holy cow. That is fascinating. So if we have somebody who has a flagrant foul in the NBA and they say, listen, I was trying to slow myself down. I wasn't following through. I was trying to help. You're actually going to know from the data. And you're not going to just be relying on video data.
Correct.
That's fascinating.
Correct.
Now, what about this? Let me ask you about some other technologies that can work in conjunction with yours. And I just want to get your objective sort of feedback on the pros and cons of them. From what I understand, they're putting cameras into every NBA stadium now that record. I'm not sure what company does that.
That's SportView. It's part of Stats, LLC. Yeah.
Okay, so SportView.
Yeah, SportView is the camera's name.
Yeah, explain what that technology is and how that works.
So I should caveat and say we've got an exclusive partnership with those guys exactly for this reason. So they are doing
It's called
SportView, VU, yeah. So they are focused on media applications. We see that we will have a lot of opportunity to contribute to media applications as well down the track. But really, cameras are much better at doing things for viewers than they are at measuring the intricacies of movements for performance and safety, just because they're not wearing the inertial sensors. It's much harder to get that data. So our relationship with them is to say, let's get your data and let's feed it into our system.
Got it.
And let's work together to try and enhance.
So you're going to try to thread the needle between what the velocity and everything of the player was. And here at SportsView, I'm just going to bring it up for a second. Hopefully I got the right one. But if you see the heat maps now, here it is right here. You can take a look. That's the sort of SportsView technology, which is you can see where somebody hit the ball,
Correct.
All that kind of stuff.
That's especially good for media. That's especially good for viewers.
Yeah, I mean, I love this idea of this technology because it's just great for the real-time game and pick and rolls and all that kind of stuff. But to know on a sophisticated and a classic play like this pick and roll, what is actually happening in terms of acceleration is fantastic. So you did a pilot with the Knicks. You did a pilot with the Dallas Mavericks. I don't know if you can talk about those specific pilots or specific players, but give me something around a specific player that we learned.
So let me not give you something around specific players.
Oh,
but
I really want to know about a specific player.
So we didn't do. They are customers. We didn't do pilots with them. They just can't wear it in games.
Right.
But they are ongoing customers of ours.
So they're using it in practice.
Correct.
Got it. Primarily for peaking issues. Yeah,
and performance and safety. So look, in games, I'm going to use Australia as an example just because that is what a mature market looks like with complete penetration. Everyone is wearing it. There is media data that is coming out that's being piloted. Anything that you want to know about what is going on in the game, you can find out about that. And what people tend to think about as viewers is they think we want to know heart rate or we want to know speed of a player. But actually, that's not what they want to know. What they are because you know that once or twice and you lose interest in it pretty quickly. Everyone's heart rate's the same. I'll give you that as a clue, right? I mean, that's boring stuff. But what's interesting...
So it doesn't really... Everybody's performing at a very high heart rate.
And it's a lag indicator. Like you go and you do something and then, a few seconds later your heartbeat starts to rise. So
lags, that's true.
So, so what's interesting is to say things like, let's talk about... I'll use football as an example. Let's talk about tackles. And let's create some metrics that say that was a perfectly executed tackle. And using our technology, we might say that was a green zone tackle.
A green zone tackle.
I just made up some terminology.
As opposed to a yellow
or a red. And I'm not talking about impact or injury. I'm just talking about the quality of the execution of the skill of tackling.
Wow.
That is the stuff to me that is going to start engaging viewers. But without inertial sensors, with just XY position, you cannot get that information.
Got it.
So it requires a full sensor pack. And I think what viewers want is something that takes the game to the next level for them and explains some of the intricacies that they cannot see with the naked eye.
See, this would be amazing. If you were watching the NBA Finals and you could say, look, LeBron is accelerating, right, because you have acceleration, and is elevating and accelerating in the last 20 scores of the game, or in the last 50 baskets of the game, he had 6 of the top 7 in terms of acceleration or whatever. But then you could look and say, like, listen, Tim Duncan is slow as molasses, but he is executing his off-the-glass move, with this level of deftness. That would just be absolutely fascinating because that's the thing we debate as fans.
Or how do players, you see a drive to the basket and they look like they're walking straight around the defense. How did that happen? What if we say because there was a 0.6 second delay between when he moved right and the defense moved left?
You could be like, yes.
That's why he got around him. That 0.6 seconds is what you just saw happen there.
Wow. Yeah, Raymond Felton ate 3 donuts before the game. Sorry, Raymond, but you were the disaster for the Knicks last year and you cost us the goddamn season. But Raymond Felton, too many donuts. Not enough crunches. So slow. Everybody's walking around him. As Clyde would say, Matador D. All right, listen. This is absolutely fantastic. Now, the company's been around for 4, 5, 6 years.
So the tech has been around for 10 years. The company's been around for 7 years.
7 years. What does it cost a pro team to use something like this for the season?
So how
do you charge them? So SaaS model?
Yeah, SaaS model. That's right.
Okay, software as a service model. They're renting it. So
they're getting software as a service. They're getting some hardware that goes together with that. They're paying a couple of $100 a month per player that's using it.
Okay, so you got 15 players, a couple of $100 too much. That's a bag of shells for an NBA team.
I mean, NFL salary cap $133 million a year for a team. It's not moving the needle, right?
So they might pay 100,000, 200,000, something in that range?
Yeah.
That's nothing. You're too cheap, dude.
That, you know,
it should be 1%.
So
do you make the players more than 1% safer and more effective?
We make teams win championships.
So more than 1%.
Sure.
So then listen, this is what you need to do. You give everybody the thing, but you say, if you increase in your standings, you can either pay us, 150 dimes, or if you increase in the standings by this many games, we want a bonus of this amount. And whichever is greater, we get paid. That would be sick.
So yeah, I got to take you in sales calls.
I'm just saying, you should just pay. Listen, we're so confident in our technology. Instead of the $150,000, we'll charge you $50,000 if your team doesn't improve. But if you do improve, we would like $10,000 for every game above your last season record that you go up. So, we want $50,000 more per game you go up. They go up 10 games, you get $500,000. It's a no-brainer.
Just like performance based. Yeah, I agree.
A little spiff there.
One thing I will say is that there have been some companies that developed some simple tech and tried to give it away to teams. We have certainly seen teams not interested in, the cost is not the decision-making thing.
They don't want this?
So they will they will pay big dollars for this over and above getting free tech from somebody else. They understand.
All right, so here's the deal. I'll invest in the company, but I want you to give me covertly which teams are using and which teams are not. And then I'm going to put bets in Vegas down on the teams using it for the season. I mean, I got to have some kind of material edge. If I can get a 5% advantage, God, I could just be going to Vegas and putting bets down.
So you got to find out who's using it. And
who's
then
not.
2 years later, because it takes them a year to really embed it.
Right. Yeah, I need a year 2.
Yeah.
And then I need who's not using it.
Yeah.
Then I bet the year 2 people over the thing. I bet you there's bookies doing that.
So
this is how bookies get their edge. I bet you there's bookies right now who know who's using Catapult and who's not, because they just know they talk to the trainer. Hey, you using Catapult or not? Hey, how's the team doing? Oh, how's that Catapult technology? And then they're sitting there writing notes.
Well, I mean, the Spurs are our customers. The Seahawks are our customers.
Yeah, it's definitely an event. Okay, so 5 years from now, what will the state of the art be? If you guys execute perfectly, you got unlimited runway, you get a bunch of cash. Technology keeps improving at the blazing speed it is, hardware, accelerometers, all this kind of stuff. Where in 5 years will Catapult be?
So at the moment globally, there's 3% penetration of the world market.
Okay.
It's tiny. The first thing is, in 5 years, I would estimate we'll be asymptoting towards 100% penetration. Right. No team is going to be turning this kind of stuff down.
No. It'd be foolish, because once one team in the league has it, you have to adopt it just to have parity.
Well, it's a huge disadvantage not to have it. That's right.
You have to reach parity.
To me, again, I talk about that pyramid of value. So the predictive analytics will be a very, very big driver of team decision-making.
Example. Give me an example. 5 years from now, you execute.
What combination of players should we play in different formations over the course of the season to maximize our year-long performance and maximize the playing careers of those players?
Wow. Oh, my God. That's mind-blowing. So we're going to look at our schedule. We're going to pick who's on the court or the field based upon how many years is left in that person's career.
Correct.
Perhaps how many years we have them under contract for.
We already see this. I mean, what I'm telling you, in markets, they contract a player for 3 years. It might be a rookie. They say, look, we are not going to push this guy hard in year 1. We are having a 3-year plan using the Catapult technology to maximize their development and performance over the 3-year contract.
That's brilliant. And they might run them harder if they have a 3-year contract and not worry about years 4 and 5 if they don't see them as a long-term player, right? It could be a little downside here.
I mean, definitely there's a lot
They could burn people hot.
A lot of things open up, and, we are at the very – so, I often talked about this as a revolution in elite sport. Everyone talks about revolutions and,
they throw that term around pretty
But this is – what
easily.
We are seeing is a revolution in the way that teams are being managed and athletes are being managed in elite sport.
What about this is not your business, but inside the player's body, biochemistry, their blood sugar, adrenaline, all these things. It's not too far off to think we would be able to take real-time samples of people's blood and get some kind of data back to a physician or a biologist and know, LeBron James's blood sugar minute by minute. Do they even do that kind of thing? Understand the glucose level of players?
So globally, they do a lot of blood. I mean, not specifically in the US, but globally, there's a lot of this kind of testing that goes on.
Yeah, but that's to find out if you're using performance enhancement stuff.
For health
How
reasons.
often do they do it?
So they're not doing
weekly?
it minute to minute. They might do it weekly. And it really varies between different leagues around the world and different teams. The big question to always ask is, so I come from a medical background. So this is the way you need to think about diagnostics. Is it going to change management? If it's not going to change management, then the diagnostics are a waste of time and money.
So you have to get compliance and enough value that people will execute.
Testing blood glucose every minute.
I don't know.
I'm just because you said, what can we find that will actually change the way that we manage this player?
Right.
Those are the important
Do you think there's
things.
anything inside the body?
I think there's absolutely things inside the body.
What?
Yeah. Look, it's a hard thing to talk about. I think you might get into a realm where there are limits to what you want to do and what you're prepared to do.
What, for ethical reasons?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's, so for our technology, there's no ethical debate around it.
Right.
But, it's a slippery slope. So what if you want to start embedding stuff in players?
Right.
So what if the player
That's exactly what I want to do.
So what if they don't want to comply with that? Are you going to compel them to comply?
Hey, listen, if you want to play for the Knicks and I own them, you're putting that chip in, man. I need to know your glucose level.
That's an ethical challenge, right?
Absolutely. It's not an ethical challenge for Jason. If I can get the Knicks from Dolan, I will do whatever it takes to wear a championship. Carmelo Anthony will absolutely have a chip, and he'll do it. Trust me, Carmelo Anthony will put in a cyborg brainstem if it gets them a championship. That's how bad the Knicks are suffering. Now, I kid.
Hopefully we'll see
but it is getting to a level of incredible ethical issues. There's a company I'm looking at right now, thinking about investing in, that puts your type of sensor on a gun. And so, my brother was a cop, my uncle's a cop, my cousin's a cop. I got a lot of cops and firemen in the family. You're going to know when the gun gets taken out of the holster. You're going to know when the gun is tilted. You're going to know where it's tilted, what axes. If it's cocked, fired, of course, all in real time. And you're going to know exactly where the gun is. Holy cow. When you think about what's happened recently in the United States, it's one thing to have video evidence of people getting shot and witnesses. It's a whole other thing to know the exact trajectory of the gun. But boy, is that going to help society ultimately.
So I think there's a lot of ethical questions and opportunities that tech is raising. I mean, there is, the gun that is kind of an automatic sniper rifle, right, that can fire 2 miles or 2 kilometers or whatever it is, and it turns me, who's not a sniper, into like a high-quality sniper. I mean, there's all sorts of issues. We try to steer way clear of where the ethical boundaries are with this technology.
What did a player ever take this out and just put it under their foot and smash it? Anybody get really pissed off about having to use this? Did some crazy player be like, F this, and just put it on and just crush it?
There are a tiny number of players that are not enthusiastic about wearing it. They don't crush it, but they're not enthusiastic about wearing it.
And why? They just don't want to have their chops busted about their speed every play?
I think, it is a much less rational decision than that. I think that they have a visceral reaction to, I don't want to be tracked. But I would be talking about 3 or 4 players amongst an entire league.
And are they the top players who are like, F this, man, I'm the best?
I think there's not necessarily a correlation between how good they are and their reaction to this stuff. And in fact, what you see amongst the very best guys, this is what they say. Put it on me because I want to show you I'm better than that guy. I'm faster, I accelerate harder.
And is that happening actually?
They are ultra competitive. Absolutely, that happens at training. They play players off against each other to see who's better.
This is the thing. A lot of the decisions in the NBA, I know because I'm a Knicks fan, are made because upper management spent so much time hiring somebody for some huge contract. They tell the coach, you got to play this guy. You got to play him. And for PR reasons, they got to play the guy. And then it turns out it's there's a guy on the bench who actually is more consistent and would actually play better and is actually at his peak and is peaking or whatever. And they don't play them for PR reasons. Political, public relations, damage control because they signed a huge contract. They don't want to look stupid. This takes all that out.
So I think, look, I don't know.
It's
the idiosyncrasies of clubs I'm not familiar with, but so I would say Moneyball used output metrics.
Yeah.
This is about understanding the input metrics.
Dude,
that is the way to think about
it. So genius. Adir, this is extraordinary. I am absolutely taken by what you're doing with Catapult Sports. Congratulations on the huge success. Wearable athletic and analytics improves performance and reduces injuries. Wow. I mean, you are just crushing it. And the client list is absurdly impressive. 450 plus teams.
Mm-hmm.
How many people work at the company?
We're up to 60, a bit north of 60 now. So we've doubled in the last 10 months, and I think we'll probably double again.
Based in Melbourne.
Based in Melbourne, but, the center of gravity rapidly shifting to the US.
Yeah, you got to move to the U.S., dude.
Yeah, I think we're kind of in the process.
Oh, you really?
Yeah.
Was that contingent when Mark Cuban invested 6 months ago? Was that part of his thing? It's like, hey, you guys got to be here?
He was. He did not make any kind of demands like that, but it's a logic. I mean, the US is our biggest market now globally. That only happened in the last 12 months. We can see where the opportunity.
And the government gave you a big grant, huh? That's nice.
Early days, yeah.
That's incredible. Being an entrepreneur in Australia, the government is so rich from mining all that stuff in the North Country and selling it to China.
That's true. If you're going to listen, I've always said in business, in life, nothing beats luck. You can have everything. I'll just take luck.
Well, I mean, listen, it was a penal colony. We sent prisoners there.
Yeah, well, you didn't, but yeah.
Yeah, it was the penal colony, and lo and behold, who knew? But you've got the most amazing minerals there. What impact has that had in society there, do you think?
It's a rich country because of that. You know what? I'm going to tell you an answer to this, which directly relates to startups and innovation.
Okay, go ahead.
So I spent a lot of time in Israel, a lot of time in Australia.
You're Israeli?
I'm Israeli by background, yeah.
You're the only Israeli with an Australian accent I've ever met.
I think that there are...
Let me hear your Haftorah. Go ahead.
I'm not singing my Haftorah.
I want to hear the Haftorah.
No, I can't remember my Haftorah. It's, a few years ago. There's 100,000 Jews in Australia. I'm not the only one, but
with that accent. But you were born in Israel.
Yeah, I was there for a year. My parents are Aussies.
Your parents were Aussies. They went back to Israel. You were born there, and then you came back.
Correct.
But anyway, you had an anecdote or a point.
So in Israel, there is no easy way to live a good life. If you want to live a good life, you sweat it.
Yeah.
In Australia, you can live a very, very comfortable life by going to medical school or law school or do finance.
Yeah.
There's many different ways to live a really high-quality life. Melbourne just got rated the number one most livable city in the world. So the
number one most livable city in the world.
The Economist magazine, again, rated Melbourne number one most livable.
And this is because the government provides everything.
You would call it a socialist country. We don't call it a socialist country. I don't call it socialist.
I call it a rich capitalist society, actually.
Healthcare is free and, education.
Yeah, it's not really socialist if you have so much money
but there's high taxes.
Why not do it?
There's high taxes. You can pay half your income as tax.
Half, but you're not talking socialist France where they're like, 60, 70%, let's go. And then Gerard Depardieu is like, you know what? I'm the greatest treasure here. I'm going to Moscow.
So the problem with having the ability to live an easy life is the incentive to take risks is diminished.
Right.
And the way that manifests. So now we've got a nice startup ecosystem, let's call it, developing in Australia.
Yes,
You've seen some of Atlassian and there's some great companies.
Back in the day, Hot Dog Software.
Right, yeah. So, but it's a good memory. But it's not the same because there is just not the same do or die requirement to innovate. And I think that is the challenge.
You have in Israel, you have in the United States.
Yeah. I mean, Israel's the ultimate, right? Israel, there is no easy way to live a good life in Israel. You got to sweat it.
It's not when people are getting on buses with vests to murder people for really existing. And there's a country that has explicitly said in the United Nations that they want to have you wiped off the planet. I mean, I don't know what's going on at the United Nations, but how do you let one country...
we're not popular there, I don't think.
How do you let a country come into the United Nations and say, we want to wipe the other country off the planet? Don't you get kicked out for anything?
Yeah, I think...
I mean, how is Iran in the United Nations? You should be kicked out if your reason to exist is to annihilate another country, to wipe them off the face of the planet. Well, fuck you.
So I want to know, since we're talking about politics, where is the United Nations of Free Democracies? That is the group that I want to establish.
Yes.
That is who should be making the world's decisions.
Absolutely.
I don't care what the Syrians have got to say or the North Koreans have got to say.
Yeah, fuck those guys.
I want a United Nations of
You can bleep out the
democracies.
F-bombs. I'm sorry. It's like, this is what happens when I hang out with a guy from Melbourne is we start talking some real talk.
I've been very polite. I haven't said a word.
But listen, $15 an hour is the minimum wage now there?
Yeah, that's about right. There's not much tipping though, right? You don't need a tip.
No, people don't tip. But I was talking to a guy. I was there like maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and he was telling me like how much they made there in the minimum wage. And it was like, wow, everybody here has a great life. Even the lowest portions.
Listen, there is poverty still in Australia. It exists everywhere. There are some homeless people in Australia, but it is not the same as walking around San Francisco.
Mentally ill or addicted to drugs, or is it somebody who can't find a job? Because my understanding was, even if you can't find a job, the sort of
there's Social Security that doesn't end.
Social Security takes care of you.
It doesn't end.
It never ends.
It never ends.
So if you can't find work, you can be on what we call welfare here. So you call
the
it
dole. Yeah.
The dole. You can be on the dole, as it were, indefinitely.
Correct.
So you're not going to be on the street. You can have just a junky little apartment based on the dole every month, $1,000 or something.
So there definitely are, there definitely are people on the street, like families that have hit hard times. But it is true that a lot of people that are living homelessly have got more complicated and complex problems than that.
Yes. And isn't it true that you're importing people to work in service positions?
That's true.
Like you don't have enough people to fill the jobs because the country's so wealthy.
It's controversial, right? It's controversial. Like these, there is definitely a view that there are not enough qualified people to fill specific jobs.
Yes.
And there is another view that the whole system is being gamed. I tend to the former view than the latter, but it's a controversial thing. It's controversial.
How many people are there? Is it 30, 40 million
25
people?
million.
It's only 25 million.
Yeah.
And the landmass.
It's huge.
Gigantic. But how much of the landmass is not even used at this point?
I mean, the whole country is clustered in a few big cities, right? There's Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane. I mean, that's the East Coast. That's more than half the country.
If I want to open inside.com in Australia, I can get a subsidy of $1 million a year to put like 10 people there, right?
From who?
The government.
You need to tell me about that. I haven't heard.
No, I thought did you get a loan or a subsidy?
No. So
what did you get? A grant?
Research and development encouragement.
Somebody was telling me, like Canada, if you open up and you hire people, they'll pay like a tax credit, which then becomes essentially like you get free employees.
So Australia has not historically done great things around innovation. The ability to give options to people right now is terrible. They get taxed up front, and it's absolutely awful.
You're kidding.
So this is problems with the Innovation Society.
Are they going to fix that?
They say they're about to fix it, but definitely grants for research and development has been a hallmark of Australia.
But look at what's happening to you. You're looking at it and saying like, hey, we were born here, bred here, and we made our bones here, as we say in the States. We made our bones here, and now maybe we'll HQ in the U.S. And I bet you're going to HQ in U.S. because you want to IPO in U.S. and you want to have investors in the U.S. and you want to have options for your employees in the U.S. Like, you got to get these things sorted.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
You got to sort them.
Absolutely. So, yes, you're right.
I mean, listen, in terms of investment, it's like very difficult for guys like me and other investors to invest in things outside the U.S. because we look at it and go, love the company, love the founder. Am I going to get my ass kicked by the local government? Like, what's going to happen here? This company's going to have some natural capping point, whereas U.S. companies, it's like you try to stop an American company, it's like, good luck. Look at Google. Like, the government's like, what is Google doing exactly?
Yeah, Uber, right? Uber does a pretty good job.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, with all the ride-sharing services, Airbnb, like, our attitude here is, in order to innovate, sometimes you got to, you want to make an omelet, some eggs have to be broken. And our society says, advancing and building great businesses for the 21st century and being competitive on a global stage is worth a couple of eggs being broken. And you know what? That's why we win.
So I don't think that that's a dissimilar to Australia's view. One thing I definitely have found—
You guys are breaking eggs.
I found that when we first started talking to people, the question was, how is it possible there's not a US company that's better than you? We're now past that, but definitely because of the demeanour of Australians, we often tend to get underestimated in terms of how determined we are to succeed.
All right, listen, amazing episode. We're 70 minutes in. I thought this was going to be like a 20-minute episode. You're a fascinating dude. And thank you to our partners and sponsors. Thanks to Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie and soon-to-be Emmy Award-winning technical producer and just amazing artist Jacob, and Andrew, Brandon, Luke, Demont, Drew, Emily, one of my favorite people. Just great job, everybody. All the people who work for me are so awesome. Everybody's like, Jason, you're so successful. You get so much shit done. You're just like, you're crushing it. I'm like, if you saw the team, you would understand why. Behind every great founder is an even better team. We'll see you next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.